This is a comedy podcast and should not be used as a primary source of information. We apologize in advance for offending any tiny persons, the undead, the country of France, and all other minority groups. Information provided should not be considered extensive research. Use as directed. This podcast can burn eyes. Follow application directions exactly. Do not use while sleeping. Safety goggles recommended. Do not eat this podcast. Keep out of reach of children. Never use a lit match or open flame near this podcast. May cause drowsiness. Use care when operating heavy machinery. Avoid placing this podcast near crotch. Can cause urine to turn black. Once used rectally, this podcast should not be used orally. Loss of the ability to perform or enjoy sex and or painful erections that last for more than 4 hours are common while listening to this podcast. Other side effects include uncontrollable laughter, choking, fits of hysteria, diarrhea, anal hemorrhaging, constipation, bloating, sleepwalking, hallucinations, frequent alien abduction, excessive gambling, spontaneous combustion, blind spots, distorted vision, halos around lights, hair loss, unwanted hair growth, aggression, antisocial behavior, impulsivity, irritability, anger, anxiety, screaming, or self-harm.
But seriously, this show is not for anyone who is easily offended by strong language or graphic content. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Tell you about my Jimmy Buffett story?
No, but you better.
I posted this on Facebook. I went up to the get gas at the corner of A and Garden Street, and there's this guy named DeWolf, a street performer, who's out there playing. And I've met him once or twice, but he didn't really know me. And I went over there and I gave him $1 after I pumped some gas, and I said, "Hey man, play me something." He goes, "What do you want to hear?" I go, "Well, take a look at me. Just play something you think a guy like me would want to hear." He goes, "I'll play you some Jimmy Buffett." And I go, "I'll give you another $1 if you don't." So he made $2 instead of $1.
Oh, that's.
I'll give you another $1 if you don't. But why did he assume that I would want to hear Jimmy Buffett? I guess that's the dangerous question. Play something you think I would like. Do I look like a parrot head?
Yeah.
Are you recording?
Yep.
Okay. Do I look like a parrot head? Seriously?
I think it's kind of a broad. It's broad. Like somebody's thought I was like a widespread panic guy.
Ooh, it's kind of the same ballpark.
It's exactly. Yeah, it was some kid I was working with, and who knows? We started talking about something, Nick Cave or some shit. And she's like, "You're in this?" She's like,
I like
I'm
Nick Cave though.
"Why do you look so shocked?" And she's like, "I thought you were like all widespread panic and shit." I was like, "Wow, okay, well."
Yeah, I asked for it. I said, "Play me something you think I would like." I don't know what I expected him to break out with. Some Yola Tango or something.
Uh-huh.
You know, I don't know. What am I expecting? Anyway.
Welcome to It's All Gone Terribly Wrong, a podcast of absurdities, oddities, and obscenities. Nope. Oddities. Nope. I don't find.
Are you playing your partner tonight?
Yep. I'm both Cheech and Chong tonight.
You said it.
Absurdities, oddities, and obscenities. I said it right the first time. All right, cool. So today Jordyn is out, unfortunately. She's feeling ill.
Feel better.
Everybody reach out to her and wish her a speedy recovery. But to save the day, we've got Jayson and Troy that will be bantering about interesting musical stories or stories of an odd, absurd, obscene nature that have to do with music, musicians, stuff like that. And I can't think of anybody better to have this conversation with, or, kind of like me and the rest of the listeners are just going to be eavesdropping on probably one of the coolest conversations you'll hear all year.
That's a lot of pressure.
Pressure's on. So, anyway, who wants to go first? Should we toss a coin?
Flip a
Troy's.
coin. You do like a football. I mean, mine's not going to be that. Well, that's true. That way, I don't want to follow. I don't want to follow you. What's that?
Do you have several stories?
Yeah, a couple little small ones.
Okay. Well, then we'll do one, you, and then back to you if we still have time.
Okay. I'm going to start with some local stuff. Did you guys hear about the recent scandal with the local Iron Maiden cover band, Maiden Immortal?
Not aware.
Just happened like last week. We had a little story about it in the Pensacola News Journal. They were playing a club in New Orleans, and they got there. It's the Southport Music Hall in New Orleans. They get there. There's supposed to be some other bands on the bill, and they see on the telephone pole outside the hall these flyers for the show, and it had swastika, and it said whites only, you know, and stuff like that. They immediately start pulling them down, and they weren't sure. They talked to the club people, and the club people had no idea what was going on. They're thinking somebody was pranking them. They even got a hold of the cops. The cops came in and said these have been found all over town. They didn't know whether to play or not. They went on the local TV station right away. They went out in front of it and said, "Look, we don't know what's going on," and they couldn't have denounced it. I mean, you know, any more adequately. Yeah, they did a really good job of getting in front of it. They were on the television, and they found out that it wasn't any of the other bands. It wasn't the club. They went on with the show. They were debating whether to play it or not. And that's really unfortunate. But you can see them at Vinyl coming up, I think. When is that? They're coming up at Vinyl. I'm not even sure when, but you can look on vinyl.com.
I will put that information here.
vinylmusichall.com or vinylmusic.com. One of those things. Rebecca will get you straight. That leads me into my favorite Pensacola music kind of controversy. Okay. Have I told you guys about This Bike is a Pipe Bomb? Did I tell you that story?
Yes. No, wait. Sorry. No, you didn't. Sorry.
This Bike is a Pipe Bomb was a band with Terry Johnson, Rymo D, Ted Helmick, and I don't know if you're in it originally. Do you know who David Dondero is?
Yes.
David Dondero was their original drummer, because David lived here in a while. Great songwriter.
He's the guy who Connor Oberst ripped off his entire shtick from. Am I correct?
No, it's the other way around.
The other way around?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. He was, because his original band, well, see, he was in a band called Sunbrain that Connor was a big fan of. I'm pretty sure that's the way it was.
Shows you what I know.
But no, you could be right, too. But I've always thought it was the other way around. But anyway, the band's called This Bike is a Pipe Bomb. And they got these little stickers, you know, and they've toured all over. They did, you know, they've been in Alaska. They did a huge kind of East Coast Alaska tour for some reason. They're kind of the forefront of that folk punk kind of movement from the 90s. They played a lot of country music, but it was really kind of a punk hard at it. Well, they got the little stickers that say, This Bike is a Pipe Bomb. That's their little sticker. A lot of people like to put these on bikes. And this band formed in the 90s, but things got a little different after September 11th, 2001. And this band has toured, and they're well known in those circles nationwide. They've slept on a lot of couches across the United States. So there have been some problems. One of the biggest, well, I'm going to go in order. 2001, they were playing at an Austin Peace Rally, and there was a sticker on a bike that said, This Bike is a Pipe Bomb. They came, the cops were called.
That's so dumb, because like nobody would label their pipe bomb.
You don't know. I mean, and this is in 2001, so at a peace rally.
Yeah.
They got the bike owner. They arrested him. Once they verified this is a band, legit, you know, he was let go. 2006, at St. Joe's University in Philadelphia. The university was evacuated for a few hours when there was This Bike is a Pipe Bomb sticker on a bike outside one of the resident halls.
Nice.
Same thing, cops came.
I'm just a fan.
I did hear about this one.
2009 was probably the best one. 2009 in Memphis at the airport. Next to terminal, there was a bike with This Bike is a Pipe Bomb. This is an airport. You know they brought out the K9 units, the bomb squads. They ended up destroying the bike with the jaws of life type of thing.
Wouldn't that detonate the...
Right?
I don't know.
Wouldn't that trip
I
off
don't
the...
know. That's according to Rymo D. Rymo D was one of the band members, and he said that in an subsequent interview, that they destroyed it with the jaws of life. I mean, I don't know. He wasn't there anyway. They called him up, and he's like freaking out, you know. And I think his first quote was, "I can't believe this is happening again," you know. And he went on to talk about, you know, people should use discretion and caution when applying their stickers and stuff. And I think the words got out. They broke up, I think, in 2011. But I saw the night you guys, I saw you guys at Chizuko. Mm-hmm. One of the guys was there, Ted Helmick. He was at the bar sitting talking with Ed. Yep. With Earl, not Ed. But yeah, he was one of the guys from that. So it was Terry Johnson, who the originator of Sluggos,
Right.
Rimo D, who's been big in the music scene here for ages, and Ted Helmick for years. And it was at the beginning they had Dave Dondero on drums until he went on to bigger and better things. And you might be right about the Connor and who influenced whom. So those are my Pensacola stories. But
Sweet.
let him go to him some stuff
All right.
because yours is gonna be longer, and I got other stuff after that.
Moving right along.
But I want to get some local stuff in.
Pause.
I have these stories in my head, but I guess I just edit out a lot of stuff and just get to the key points, and I hate that. Years of journalism.
Here's to journalism.
No, years of
I know.
journalism.
It sounded like you said, here's the journalism. Wait, here's the journalism.
Cut out anything unnecessary, man.
Hey. Omit needless words.
Yeah.
All right, Jayson Knox.
Is that how you pronounce your last name?
No.
Knox?
No, sir.
Knife.
Can you? If you would like to.
I said knife.
Oh,
Knife.
I thought you said can I.
Can I? Can I pronounce it like that?
Knife.
Well, I want to sound really good and professional, so.
You're doing fine. You're at your maximum peak for your game. So we're all peachy keen.
We can edit all this out.
Edit
On my
me
belly.
out.
No.
You could tell a story I don't
Edit
know anything
my-
about, too. I know.
It's fine.
Oh.
It's fine. It's fine. Just go.
I thought
Okay.
it
Just
was-
like whatever. Just go.
Okay. In the spirit of oddities, absurdities, and obscenities, I thought
Boom. Nailed it.
it would be. I don't know what to call this story, an obscenity or just a sad tale or just
That's for me to decide.
tales of black magic gone wrong
Yes.
with a dash of wild late 60s.
All right.
Yeah. LSD.
Yep.
Alexander Spence, known by his nickname Skip. Skip Spence released one solo album before going into complete obscurity, living on the state's dime somewhere in California. Briefly jailed for soliciting a minor. Gratuitous usages of heroin and cocaine to the point where he was once rumored to have been on a slab in the morgue with a tag on his toe where he sat up and asked for a glass of water.
Nice.
Skip Spence. How do we start? It's 2000, and I have a roommate in Austin who I feel a lot of her record collection is, I don't know, just way out of my league. Stuff I've never heard of, like bands like Television.
Marquee
And,
Moon, great album.
Bands I'd heard of but never heard, actually. I thought they were bands that cool people just talked about. And she had all those albums, like Can from Germany and Velvet Underground, of course. And she had this album, and I just thought it looked weird. And it was called the Oar, like a rowing device, oar. And I was playing this thing, and I was like, this is so crazy. This is like a spooky, fucking beautiful album. I can't stop playing it over and over. Can we curse on here?
Yeah. Of course.
Okay.
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me? Have you heard that shit before?
Poo poo.
Have you heard
Twat.
Jordan?
I like twat.
Jordan, feel better.
The
Please.
album was called Or.
The name of this album is Or. It is the one and only single released by the man known as Skip Spence, excluding works with the band he was previously in, Moby Grape.
Oh, well, that's why
One
you
of
did
the
that.
biggest bands in San Francisco, to the point where at one time or another, all these bands opened for them. Bands like Big Brother and the Holding Company, Quicksilver Messenger Service, Jefferson Airplane, of which Skip Spence had actually been the first drummer
For the Airplane?
for the Airplane.
Wow.
Possibly the first signs of some mental instability there when he was kicked out because he took off on a trip to Mexico without telling anyone in the band. So boom, he's on their first album, Jefferson Airplane, first album. This guy pops up playing drums. The band Moby Grape forms out of Skip Spence and Peter Lewis, Jerry Miller, Bob Mosley, Don Stevenson on drums. Don Stevenson would later be lucky to escape death at the hands of Skip Spence, wielding a hotel fire axe in New York City. Jerry Miller, lead guitar and vocalist, was the one who managed to talk Mr. Skip Spence into handing over the axe. I should say said axe. That sounds.
The alleged.
I should say it that way.
That's what
It was proven in court. None of this is the vagueness is where Mr. Skip Spence lost his sanity. But court records show the acts, the threat, the statement that Don Stevenson was a serpent who had taken human form and must die in order to save him. Makes plenty of sense, right?
Yeah.
That's all public record. According to the band, what's that? According to the band, no, it happened.
What caused all this?
They say, according mostly to Don Stevenson, once Moby Grape had to go to New York specifically to record because it was somehow an accommodation to their producer, who turned out to also be their manager. This put a lot of stress on the band. They were away from their families. They were staying in a hotel. According to, what's his name again? Don Stevenson. At some point, Skip's drug use turned grim. Like it must have been amphetamines or cocaine or something that was making him sweat all the time. Yeah. And they're chalking it up to a new crowd of people he was running with in New York.
A New York crowd, man.
Allegedly sort of a witchy... They joked that he was led away by a witchy woman, but they, women have to take the blame for a lot of ridiculous shit all the time. So
True.
This is not
Hashtag us too.
hashtag them too.
What was
This
Patti
is
Smith's?
rock and roll was chanted by a bunch of white, punk rock Portland kids and their aging parents and uncles.
Oh
And that gets a pass, but I would read all this other stuff where something was insensitive to ethnicity or homosexuality. And I'm like, there was a room full of white kids screaming that word last night. What?
Yeah.
Give me that.
Yep.
Portland, you what? And I'm your,
Portland, I'm a Shanghai you. That's
And
a
I'm-
reference from
I'm feeling
last
like-
episode.
yeah. I felt threatened. I'm in the coffee shop. I'm the barista guy,
Yeah, there's
Wearing-
white kids.
wearing my knit cap and playing the latest, Bon Iver.
John
How do
Cougar
you say it?
Camp.
Bon Iver.
I've heard it both ways. I'm always afraid to say it in public because I know whichever way I say it, I'm going to be corrected.
Bon Iver.
Bon Iver. Yeah, I say Bon Iver, man.
I often felt a little threatened by some of the women customers. Like they were looking for a reason to deck me. But that must be my own paranoia fucking with me.
They've been listening to too much Patti Smith.
It's just something. The ones that they would wear like a tank top, which people call a wife beater, which is ridiculous.
Because wives can beat other.
They had
husbands.
crew cuts, and they would have like tattoos of like a naked lady on a spark plug. And I was like, okay, play the game, pretend that they're a guy, don't say anything weird. And I was like, see, here's your latte. I did really good. I totally am like, hey, bro,
Brah.
watching a good porn lately?
Is that what guys say to each other?
No.
No. I've never gone up to one of my buddies. Hey, seen any good
No.
porn lately?
No.
I just imagine that's what you guys do. That's
We
what you
don't
talk about.
quote their names or talk about the size of body parts. No.
No, really?
No, that would be weird.
And it got really awkwardly silent in here
No,
now.
because I interrupted during the
God.
story and I didn't mean to.
Yep.
Don Shepard.
How podcasts get derailed. Mr. Skip Spence, reportedly from gratuitous amounts of uppers and cocaine, he had completely lost his mind. Again, they want to blame the black magic lady that he started dating. They want to blame her, but somehow he's convinced that Don Stevenson was a serpent who had taken human form and must die in order to save him. So he was even arrested on the 52nd floor of the CBS building.
What?
David Robinson did press charges. Their producer/manager who had forced them to come to New York to record in order that Mr. Robinson be closer to his family. This had possibly added to the mental strain on Mr. Spence. 52nd floor of CBS, wrestled to the ground. It doesn't say if he had another fire axe or if he was just barehanded in that incident. So he spends a few nights in the notorious Tombs in New York City. I don't know if you've ever... No.
Oh, yeah, I've watched enough Law and Order to know they were down. Yeah.
Where are the
Not Rikers. The Tombs. If you ever saw a video by the band The Pogues,
Nope.
Christmas in New York,
You'll be hearing that song a lot.
That song, you'll be hearing that song a lot, Rebecca, and you will love it.
Okay.
They use some curse words in there and some inappropriate un-PC words.
Yeah, if we can go, we'll get off the subject of Skip for a while and talk about the Pogues' refusal to delete the word from their Christmas in New York.
But it
a lovely
rhymes
ballad.
with the other word, though.
It rhymes, you know.
What does it rhyme with?
Maggot.
Oh, it was. I was gonna say maggot.
Yes.
I was like, that surely can't
You
be with
scumbag,
maggot.
you maggot.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
And
But, I mean, okay, and this might be good for the podcast. Let me ask you. I mean, in the context of a story like that, I had to read, they did a book reading. What was the famous Southern gal who wrote the famous book? And they had, Killing Mockingbird.
Kill a Mockingbird.
Harper Lee.
They had a book reading of it. And they asked different people to do a chapter. And I had to do a chapter. And I had the N-word. And they're blaring this all over the thing.
No.
And I asked a few people ahead of time. I asked some of my, white folks, black folks. They go, you gotta say it. That's in the book. That's part of the story. So, I mean, do you ever give an artist license for the sake of a story? Because it does. And to me, in that song, it's not gratuitous. I mean, I know it's an offensive word, but maybe
It's up to you, I think. It's a personal decision. Like, if I was presented with that situation, I would just refuse. Like, because it's my personal belief to not use words like that I don't like. You know, like, I will never use non-offensive words that I don't like.
So you would not read a Kill a Mockingbird in a public reading?
No. Or I would,
I understand that.
but I would substitute, like, ninja or whatever. It didn't have to make sense.
I
Or
thought-
I would just skip it. You blank.
The
Expletive.
It would have been. I like I said, I did ask other people, and everyone to a person told me you've got to read it.
No, you don't. You're an individual. You do what you feel is best, was right for you.
What's your take on that?
the ugly deeds will never go away that inspire these ugly words. I don't know if I'm really on the fence with that. Can we just pretend it doesn't exist? I don't know.
I mean, you're celebrating this work of art. Do you self-censor this art in the celebration of it? And
I'm
I
stuck
think I
on
did
this one.
And I didn't feel bad about it. I felt anxious leading up to it, but yeah, it's interesting.
I don't know what I would do in that position. That's rough. I did hear a comedian make a joke about the Confederate flags, saying, hey, great and all, but I hope you don't ban them as far as clothing. I need to know who not to talk to. So, just a thought on that. If we, people who threw these words around, if you grew up in a small town like I did in South Alabama, you'd be hanging out with someone, and I remember a guy saying, like, ah! And I was like, okay. It was someone who you befriend merely because they ride a skateboard, too. Like, well, we're friends then. You skate.
Amen, brother.
And he made a reference like that, and I was like, okay, I just don't need to know this guy.
How old were you when you realized that it was wrong?
I want to say 13, 12. And it mainly had to do with skating. There was a black kid he'd come over and we'd shoot hoops too if we got tired of skateboarding. And it was cool that like my older sister never said anything, my mother never said anything, and certainly my father didn't. But if me and him were like watching skate videos in the every now and then you could catch something on ESPN. You could actually catch a skate contest on ESPN. Mm-hmm. So we'd be kicking it in the living room, and I'm like, yep, I got a cool family. They don't give a shit about this. Very cool. And yeah, you hear somebody.
That is cool, man. I mean,
that's it.
Especially in South Alabama and stuff. So your parents were really cool in that respect.
Oh yeah, my grandfather had to be reprimanded.
It was
many
just the
times.
opposite with me. I had me and my brothers, and I got out of it. I knew at 7 there was an incident that turned me around, but no, I had to live with my parent. Well, my dad saying that word all the time.
Wow.
We had a break from it, but we broke from it early on. I mean, we were going to Catholic schools. It was like, that's not what Jesus is saying. I mean, so anyway, I keep interrupting your story, but that was a nice
That's
discussion.
okay. Editing.
It's a good banner too.
Yeah, I like it.
Y'all are the Cheech and Chongs now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I got way off the story about the guy.
But still, I mean,
Yeah.
what decade are we talking about? Is this in the early 70s, right after Moby
This
Grape?
is 1968. They were this big deal. Go to New York, record for this record label. Neil Young was hanging out in the room when they signed their record deal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was just like hanging out, strumming guitar in the background. Someone
Guitar.
else's guitar. Just thought it was cool to hang out with these guys. He did remark later that he knew when they had signed their record. He was there when they signed that record deal with that guy, David Robinson, or it could be Rubinson.
That's the
I can't
manager
spell.
/ producer.
Manager and producer together. Yeah. He said he mentioned later that he had a bad feeling about that. But certainly if someone's signing their first record deal, you don't want to be poo-poo on their parade. So he never mentioned it.
Apparently he did.
He just, after Skip Spence lost his mind in New York City and tried to kill Don Serpent turned human Stevenson, their drummer, with an axe in a hotel. So he went to the Tombs.
Where are the Tombs again? You never said.
In New York City, in a jail, and they had him there for a few days before they shipped him to Bellevue. 6 months.
Bellevue. Okay. The mental institution, yep.
Bellevue. But a few nights in the notorious Tombs. Arkham?
Asylum.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that like the...
Arkham? I hardly know him.
Is he cute?
Ba-dum-pouch.
I'll
find some crazy sound effect for that.
He got better,
Nice.
I guess, if he recorded an album. Good enough to record an album, I guess.
That seems to be the swan song. That record. He gets a record out, or...
When was that recorded? I mean, what area? We're talking early 70s?
1969.
1969, so...
68 was the mess with the band.
You know I'm going to
New
have to
York.
go out and listen to this when I get home now. I'm going to find it on Spotify somewhere if it's there.
It's an album I kept listening to over and over, and I kind of wished I just heard it without knowing the story. And I could just hear it and think that it's like 2 or 3... think it's a band, because it turns out the guy had to play every instrument himself. His reputation or whatever, no one wanted to play with him. So...
I mean, it was a lot different than the Moby Grape stuff.
Because
I'm not the biggest Moby Grape fan in the world.
It's so folky and spacey, and the guy's voice, I guess he had smoked a lot of cigarettes in Bellevue for 6 months. Skip Spence leaves Bellevue with a stack of notebooks. All he'd done was write for 6 months. The lyrics in those notebooks are the album Or. Those notebooks, the pajamas that Bellevue issued to him, and the motorcycle are all he owns in this world.
And I'm going to remember his name. Spence, what again?
Alexander Spence.
Alexander Spence. Skip
Nickname
Spence.
Skip. Skip Spence. The album is Or. It's 1969. He's barely hanging on to a thread of sanity. Rode a motorcycle from New York City to Nashville in his pajamas.
Nice.
With a back satchel full of notebooks, which contain the lyrics for the album. Creepy album. If you've never heard it, you might not like it. Really professional people might call it just no more than a demo for a band. But no one would play with this guy. He had to overdub everything himself. Creepy little dark, folky, smoky album.
I mean, I'm looking forward to just the description of it. Because when you say no overdubs, raw sounding, professional musicians are going to hate it, that's right up my alley, brother.
Yeah, there are overdubs. Poor Skip had to play everything.
When
if
you
he
said
wanted,
overdub, yeah, I mean, I guess you have to.
they actually the loner instruments in the studio apparently were nothing more than a bass guitar and an acoustic guitar.
Where did he record it at? Do you remember?
Some studio in Nashville.
Nashville. It was in Nashville.
At some point, someone associated with the band wrote to Fender. You could do that at those times. I know that Captain Beefheart got a Stratocaster for Ry Cooder that way. Just wrote to Fender and was like, look, we're a hot up-and-coming band, and your name will be... It's like NASCAR sponsors.
Sure.
Back in the day. They're a little tighter with that shit now.
Are you a Captain Beefheart fan?
Safe as milk. Here we go. We're going to alienate our poor hostess now with talk of this obscure...
What do you mean, alien?
With this talk of this obscure band.
This episode's not
please.
for me.
I
Okay.
like the Ice Cream for Crow album, and it Saves Milk, and then people talk about Trout Mouse replica. I put it on, but it's an acquired taste, I think. When you said,
I've never, I think, listened to the entire album.
yeah, okay, me.
I've never made it through it, and had a friend distinctly in San Diego, California, like, oh, you got it. You've never heard Trout Mask Replica, and you think that they're about it's like the first time you've heard Dark Side of the Moon or something. The first time you've heard something epic, heard Damaged by Black Flag. It's going to be this life changing album.
Arcade.
Gonna be like your Zen arcade.
I know, I get you on that.
There you go. Thank you. Exactly. And you're just listening to this thing and just going like, man, I don't get it. Is it for, is it the soundtrack for some like little child
smart enough to get it?
Yeah, Emperor's New Clothes, that too. Where I'm like, dude, you've been had.
Yeah. Okay,
there's
there's a few bands I feel that way
about. Maybe the word avant-garde is French for you're a fucking sucker or something. They've duped us all these years.
They do that a lot more in the traditional art world, where there's so much crap that just goes on by reputation, but in the music it happens too, man.
But they did their first record featuring Ry Cooder was just a good old blues record, just rocking, just white boys.
Wait. This man's last name is Cooder.
Ry
Cooder. If you've ever seen the film, was it Paris, Texas?
Yeah, with Harry Dean Stanton.
Harry Dean Stanton, Paris, Texas. All that lonesome.
He's got that lot of steel guitars.
That is Ry Cooder in the background doing the entire freaking soundtrack.
Yeah. His first name is Ry. His last name is Cooder.
His last name is Cooder. Yeah. This is yes. No, you're not the first. I had a coworker one time who goes, "I just love saying that guy's name. It's ridiculous." And I'm like, "You don't." Sometimes people really trip on it. Ry Cooder. And he was the guitar player.
I've never really listened to a lot of Ry because I've never been a music guy. But now that I'm starting to try to learn how to play guitar, I think I'm gonna give him another chance. I mean, what would you suggest I start with on Ry?
I'm not the guy to ask. I don't.
That's never been my thing. I've never been a player kind of admirer.
I don't know a lot about his solo material. I know that he did that soundtrack. I know that he played on some Rolling Stone stuff.
I do know that, yeah.
Infamously accuses Keith Richards of stealing an open G tuning from him in the press. Accused Keith Richards and Mick Jagger of being reptilian, unquote.
I can see that. And
when reached for comment, Keith Richards, I'm going to paraphrase him, stole that tuning. Who'd he steal it from?
Barry?
Who knows? But it was obviously a black man who had put out albums before 1930.
Oh, yeah.
That was where all those guys were nicking it from, as Keith Richards said.
Well, like even they said, I mean, not going back that far back, if you're not going to trace the rock, you can start Chuck Berry and throw a good line, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they did that Chuck Berry. Didn't they get in a fight with Keith and Chuck get in a fight when Keith played his anniversary celebration or something?
I've only read a vaguely. They got in a bad fight then, but there was a punching in the 60s. Chuck Berry's guitar case was open and Keith Richards had actually touched the guitar. And just being high or stupid or like, ooh, touch this pretty thing. And he got punched.
It's like the Spinal Tap line, don't even look at it.
It's rumored that at some point Keith...
Spinal Tap, did you say?
You heard of that?
Jordyn lost her virginity to that. I just want to bring that back. Also, mentioned from a previous episode. You should go listen to it.
What do you mean she lost her jeopardy? Spinal Tap caused her to lose her virginity?
Yes.
Spinal Tap
it set the mood.
Her to lose her jeopardy.
It set the mood. It was the perfect aphrodisiac.
Jordyn, get better. Do you see what I'm left with?
Come explain
Get your hoof out of your mouth.
Experience so we understand it better.
Sip.
Hey, I want to ask you about this guy. 'Cause I want to go listen. I'm curious about this music,
okay.
the Or album. I'm going to go and listen to it. You're saying this was right after, was he Vanilla Fudge or Moby Grape?
No. It was Moby Grape.
Moby Grape. I'm getting the two bands.
They were a major thing. I mean, Janis Joplin boasted about fucking him. So
the whole band?
It was that kind of level. No, Skip Spence.
All right.
It was that kind of thing.
What happened to the guy?
So he gets down to Nashville in a city full of session musicians. No one wants to show up and play on some guy's record, and you can, even if you don't get a paycheck that day, you can get, future royalties, and nobody turns up to play with this guy. There's there's no engineers available. So it comes down to a producer whose name I have foolishly left out. But him and a producer have to do their own mics. It involves a lot of running over to the board and hitting the button and then running back behind the drum kit. And they somehow get this thing released. It tanks. It sinks into obscurity. And reportedly he, I don't know if he had received a small amount of money or what, but they say he just got on his motorcycle and rode off into the distance, headed back towards the West Coast.
Was never seen again.
Sadly, that would be great if that was the end of the story, because I love this guy's music. I love this album. I love it. I've been going back to it for the first time probably since the year 2000.
Well,
it's
I'm
heavy
really
stuff
looking
for
forward to
me.
listening to this.
If the story ended there, that would be great. No, there was a brief jail term for what I assume is they call soliciting a minor.
Oh.
Yeah. I wish but you can't unknow these
Like
things.
how minor?
So, like possibly grade school age.
We're not talking about...
This man was deemed pretty much legally insane. He was on state-funded housing, never held a job.
Alleged pedophile, basically.
He had
axe wielder.
The band members would actually let him come around to recording sessions and would keep in touch with him and would give him money. So he was basically their Syd Barrett.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, her.
And if Syd Barrett... she's so clever.
Sometimes.
You've heard of Pink Floyd, right?
God, you threw me off.
You've heard of Pink Floyd?
Oh, I love that clothing brand. It's my favorite.
Oh, you threw me off.
Syd Barrett, he designed Pink Floyd, the outfit.
The outfit? Yeah.
Sadly, according to one of the band members, he developed a habit of trying to entice, I assume it was like Section 8 housing. He would try to basically lure grade school age girls into his home.
Children.
Oh my
Never
God.
succeeding. Never succeeding,
Thank
but
God.
often at some point a mother reported him. He was briefly jailed. This is why I wish the story had ended with him riding off into the distance on a motorcycle from Nashville and having recorded, a lost genius record. And
Dies alone in the desert.
and I can easily, and just something, anything else.
Whatever. So what happened to him?
He eventually lung cancer.
But how long ago, though?
That would be a major date to include in a professional story. Which,
Well, let me ask you a question, and because I've often thought of this.
You just did.
Does an artist's personality and their behavior outside of what they're producing, does it affect the art for you?
You got me on that one. I wish I didn't know about in reading up to do this story was the first I ever read about the enticing children. That was the first thing I read. Wish I hadn't read it.
Will it affect how you hear the music? You think?
Not at all. Gonna bliss out and let the symbols shimmer over my brain.
On its own.
Gotta let it stand on its own. I think that Adolf Wolfe was an artist who was a convicted molester. I don't know what year this was, but it's pretty much they've based a lot of like art brute studies around him because he's in an asylum and would do elaborate like huge pieces, draw on like wax paper with nubs of lead that he had to scrounge and scrap. And he was a convicted molester. He assaulted a child.
And there's so many stories like that, and people say, well, how can you listen to this person? How can you listen to this person? And it's like, because the album's really, really good. And, sometimes but I never have felt guilty because I always have been able to separate. Yeah, Van Morrison's, it can be a dick that, it's not a great album. And he had, never mind, I'm not even going to get into those rumors. We'll get into
What? Van Morrison beat a puppy to death.
What?
No, but
What?
There was some.
You heard it here first.
What?
I think Lester Bangs might have been one of them who got. I think it might be Cypress Avenue or even the song After Weeks. One of the songs from After Weeks, where it's talking about sitting outside the schoolyard watching the girl walk home, and in the final line he's so young and bold, 14 years old, and when you're singing about 14-year-olds, stalking them in a car, just watching them.
So people think it's that versus him recalling from like a memory.
Or what prompted an artist like that to write a song about some guy sitting in a car watching these Catholic schoolgirls, 14, so young and bold, 14-year-old walking home from school. So it makes you wonder. Especially on personal writers. There's some writers who are just writing pop formula, and that's fine. I'm not dogging that. But when you're an artist, a singer-songwriter, as they call them, you're writing stories a lot, but when you come out with something like that, are we supposed to read in just this is artistic license, or are we supposed to... I just enjoy the song. I just don't think about it too much. So.
Well, there you go.
Don't know what to say about that. I mean,
Interesting time, you know.
Just keep an eye on it and be like,
So
know
young
about
and
you.
bold.
artistic license. That's why you can make a movie where Julianne Moore is a mom fucking her son.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was that? Which one was that?
What movie is that?
Savage Grace. I made the mistake of reading the book, meaning it's...
More graphic?
It's...
Did you see Spankin' the Monkey?
I did not see Spankin' the
It was a
Monkey.
similar story.
Okay. True story?
No, this is...
Oh, Savage Grace is a true account of the heir of the Bakelite fortune who was boning his mother.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
I had to read the book. I just hadn't, and I can't unknow it. I don't regret reading it, not like the way you would regret reading, I don't know, some shitty author. Insert shitty author's name here.
Yeah.
But,
Yop.
but,
Yeah, I mean...
it was kind of crazy. Bakelite, plastic. I mean, millions and millions, and this was the kid that would have inherited it.
But you don't think that's Julianne Moore. That's what I'm saying. You have to be able to separate an artist from the art. I
They
mean,
actually did it, though?
This Bakelite, the kid,
Penetration?
in the movie,
history. I mean,
the historical,
I want to know.
or the Julianne movie.
Both.
I don't know. Yes, in actuality, the son and mother had made comments that people heard. It's a really fucked up story. He was living with her, still in her custody, and I think he was up in his 20s. His father, they think he might have also been like a latent homosexual.
The father?
The kid,
Oh.
who was fucking his mom, who he would soon murder.
Oh, no!
He
story,
murdered
that's a
her.
story. Save
Well,
this for
it's done now. It's done now.
That's a great story, man.
Keep going.
That's a great story.
It was a movie with Julianne Moore. The kid, they had said he's really crazy. In a restaurant, he screamed out, "I'm fucking my mother," or "I'm sleeping with my mother." He was much more
What a decade
appropriate
we're
than me.
talking about, you think?
Those fucked up 70s.
Okay.
The father had left her for a girl that they thought would be the son's new girlfriend, because they were like, we're starting to wonder if he's crazy or gay. He's one or the other. He's nuts or gay. He's 22 and still doesn't have a girlfriend. And they had tried to set him up with another girl from a good family.
Is this Bill Wyman?
Bill Wyman. Good call. No, he was busy playing in the Rolling Stones at that time. So rich Bakelite motherfucker takes off with a girl like probably half his age, leaving the mom to be with the son, who she's possibly starts fucking out of revenge to the dad.
Ugh, God.
Yes. The father later would say he observed weird traits, like his son was really proud one day when he figured out how to pull the wings off flies. That was the first bad sign about the kid.
Yeah,
He wasn't
I'm
sure
sure.
about the kid. Yeah. Kid ends up killing the mom, stabbing her to death.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. And then this is where you're like, oh, this could be horse shit. He allegedly was sitting there eating some Chinese takeout when the police walked in and just, said hi to them and kept eating his Chinese food as she lays on the floor bleeding, unconscious. Probably more accurate is that he had actually picked up a phone and ordered some Chinese food.
So I've heard that
But-
murder makes you hungry. Like,
Murder.
Who are you hanging out with?
Murderers.
I mean,
Oh, man, nothing
I
can...
listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, and often the killers eat directly after.
it's not called true crime. It's called investigative murder porn.
I listen to a lot of investigative murder porn, and it's often the case that the perpetrator gets very hungry and eats a meal afterward. I know stuff.
All I'm going to take away from this, the major takeaway, is I need to listen to Or by Skip Alexander. Is that the name?
Skip Spence.
Skip Spence.
That's right.
I'm getting the names in there. Alexander's in there somewhere.
A man whose story I wish it had ended with him writing off, or this, in 1996, was actually contacted to submit a song for the soundtrack of The X-Files.
Oh, wow.
The song, later released as a B-side to another song, was called Land of the Sun, reportedly turned down for being too creepy, unquote.
Too creepy for X-Files?
Too creepy for X-Files. I've heard the song. It's kind of like a loose jam.
What's the name of it?
Land of the Sun.
Okay.
It just sounds like
This is on the album?
No, this was later. This would be great if this was the end of the story and not attempted assault on a child. But 1996, he was actually contacted to do a song for the X-Files. So
That's really cool.
poor guy living in Section 8, doing, spending all his money on, diagnosed schizophrenic, spending all his money on cocaine and heroin, allegedly pronounced dead in the morgue on one OD. That would be great if it could end with that. The song, I have heard the song. It's him. It's like a psychedelic jam, like you might hear Jimi Hendrix or the Allman Brothers doing. And just every now and then you hear a guy going, like just cackling.
That sounds like a Screaming Jay Hawkins.
It's basically the white boy paranoid junkie version of Screaming Jay Hawkins.
Too
basically
creepy for X-Files, but not creepy enough for Twin Peaks.
Not creepy enough for probably perfect for Twin Peaks. If only that had bit.
Right?
If
Did
that
you
had
watch the
happened.
second season of the last season of Twin Peaks?
I don't know anything about Twin Peaks.
He's not hip or with it.
I would stop channel surfing for maybe 2 or 3 minutes and go, yeah, I don't get it. I'm guessing I was 12 at the time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get it.
I didn't get it.
You don't know anything.
I didn't get it.
You don't know anything.
I was too busy. I had some Black Flag cassettes and a couple of Playboys, and that was my world at the time.
Fuck what happened to Laura.
Every outside of late night this is before binging existed. I would binge on USA's Night Flight.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because they would feature this shit. You could see a punk rock band.
Yeah,
you could see Minor Threat.
Yeah.
You could see the Social Distortions.
Yeah.
The young punk rockers from California.
Oh,
And
yes.
what kind of a psychologist would have a field day if they could explain why when I saw that I wanted to become a punk rocker? Because it looked miserable. They had a gig where they were paid with rolls of quarters.
Nice.
It looked miserable, and I saw it and I was like,
laundry.
they visit Minor Threat who are like in this basement where they can't even stand up straight. That's what they have to practice in, and you're like, I want to do that.
Ian McKay,
Yep.
Man, that great band. I got, we're talking horror stories and stuff like that in rock and roll.
Yep.
Did I ever tell you about getting stabbed to see Husker Du?
Yay.
No, I'm glad you're still here.
Okay, this is before the internet, remember. So you didn't know, unless you looked at the Rolling Stone or...
So like 1930?
Yeah. You didn't know who was playing where, but we did hear the Beastie Boys were playing in Birmingham on the License to Ill tour. I liked that album. It was kind of, juvenile, but I like some juvenile stuff.
Yeah. I felt guilty liking it. But...
Oh, yeah. And they felt guilty making it later, so which is cool. They really did. If you talk to, them afterwards, But anyway, yeah, this was the inflatable penis on stage.
Yep.
We were up there. Murphy's Law opened for him in Fishbone. Afterwards, this is in Birmingham, there was a little riot. There was a park across the street, and there a little mini race riot had broke out, probably 50 people, and they were really slugging it out. My brother Jason and I had gone to the concert. I had a Murphy's Law t-shirt on, I remember, and the band. Mm-hmm. And Jason walked back to the hotel. I said, hey, I'm going to hang out here and just go on the outskirts, kind of look and see what's going on. So I watched this little mini riot, people fighting, and I said, screw it, I'm going to walk back to the hotel, because it seemed like it was calming down. I'm walking down a street, and it's a dark street, and 3 young African-American gentlemen are walking.
Black dudes.
3 black guys walking toward me. And like I do to everyone, I say, what's going on, man? How you doing? I'm not going to ignore people when I'm walking by them. How's it going? All I remember is saying, this is how it's going. I feel something hit my neck.
Oh, shit.
They start kind of lunging at me after that. I took off against this busy road. I don't think they followed me. But I just kept running until I got to this crowd of people. I had this white Murphy's Law t-shirt. Blood was just pouring out. The people were looking at me. They're circling around, guy bleeding out of his neck. They were looking at me like I was going to die. They thought I was going to die.
Oh, no.
They brought the paramedics there, but we didn't have cell phones. I couldn't call my brother back at the hotel and tell him what was going on. They come and check me out. There's people still circled all around me looking, is this guy going to die? Is this guy going to die?
Right.
So we can talk about him on our podcast. And I said, no, it didn't get my artery, but I did lose some blood. And once I found out, I remember once I wasn't going to die, I started kind of telling jokes for the people around. I only remember what I was saying, but I was just trying to be funny, I guess, because I was so much in shock.
Right. Sounds
And they
good.
wanted to take me to the hospital. I said, I didn't have insurance or anything, and I turned down. Once they taped me up and said, you're going to be fine. You know, you just lost some blood, didn't hit your jugular, you're going to be okay. You probably need to get stitched at some point, and then you should go to the hospital. I turned down the ambulance, because for one thing, I walked back to the hotel, probably a quarter of a mile, knock on the door, my brother opens up, I'm covered in blood. We ended up going to the hospital. My brother couldn't drive. I drove us to Birmingham. So I ended up driving us, trying to find this hospital. I don't know where we got directions. I find directions to a hospital. I'm driving. I remember at one point we got lost, and I stopped at a Domino's in Birmingham and ran in, covered in blood. It was a stick shift, and my brother couldn't drive a stick shift. Got to the hospital, got stitched up. So we ended up staying an extra day. The next day, we're walking through Birmingham. We had originally were going to leave early in the morning, but we didn't get out of the hospital till early in the morning, slept in. We're walking around Birmingham, where we wouldn't have been, and we see a poster for Husker Du live that frigging night at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. One of those called the Great Hall at University of Alabama, Birmingham. It was on the warehouse tour. One of the best shows I've ever seen. I would have not seen them if I had not got stabbed. I met Grant Hart. What's that?
It was fate.
It was fate. Grant Hart tried to pick me up for the show.
You're blowing my mind.
No, it's a true story.
You have blown my mind.
They played at the Great Hall at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And even Grant, I had a thing on there, and he was hitting on me. I was kind of attractive back then, almost. And
I hate to break it to you, you're still handsome.
Right.
Oh, thank you. But Grant, I didn't know his thing at that time.
You didn't know he was gay.
I didn't know they were gay. I mean, he would have been the last. I mean, I usually have pretty good gaydar. I would have thought Greg Norton was the gay one. If there was anybody gay in Husker Du, it would be the guy with the handlebar mustache and the little
and the short
shorts.
That's right.
Yeah, but anyway, I got to see Husker Du because I was stabbed the night before at a Beastie Boys, following a Beastie Boys concert.
You heard it here.
Lord.
Do this now.
Isn't that a great story?
I know. I love the story because it goes into Husker Du and ends with us underlining the fact that you're still alive.
Yeah.
To tell the story.
My brother's Jayson. He's coming into town from Atlanta. He works for CNN now.
Couldn't drive a stick.
He could drive a stick now, I think. But yeah, that was funny. I had to drive myself to the hospital with him in the passenger seat. I remember stopping at Domino's because we got lost. It's like, well, yeah, they'll know directions. I mean, they can get us there.
Yeah, man.
If I were a pizza, where would you send me?
I left out one thing. We did have to have somebody foot for the bill, and there was a girl who I had dated from Birmingham.
No.
Her sister lived in Birmingham. Somehow I got a hold of her, called Pensacola, got her sister's number. Her sister came and took care of me. In fact, we stayed at her sister's house that night. So, Kathy Burns, thank you very much. Your sister was very nice. I think her name's Susan Burns.
Wait, which one is the one you were dating, and which one is the sister?
Kathy was Kathy.
Kathy was Kathy?
Kathy was the one I was dating.
Okay, and then
Susan was the one who let me and my brother stay at her and her husband's home.
After you got stabbed. And she paid your medical bills?
I guess. I don't know.
Sheesh.
He guess.
You guys.
Anyway.
That was a lot. That was intense.
I loved that
I'm glad
story.
I remembered that story to bring up because it kind of fits into the whole kind of oddities, absurdities.
Everything spoken today was odd, absurd, and definitely obscene. So I think we nailed it. I think you guys nailed it.
Nobody would believe that story if my brother Jayson wasn't there to vouch. You know, I mean, there's no way anyone would ever believe that story.
Right.
And someday I'll tell you. I think I told you about losing a car to see Husker Du on the interstate. We had to leave a car.
Oh God, yeah.
When I saw them in Tallahassee.
Wow.
I'll tell you that story.
Worthy sacrifice. Okay.
Crazy stories.
Yeah, so many things
and some of this information will be found on our Patreon page for our Patreon subscribers. So make sure you sign up for Patreon. You can do a one-time crime. You can donate to our Crime Con fund or buy some beers or whatever. You can help pay to have Jayson and Troy back on the show if you want.
What about for your scouting trip to New Orleans before the crime?
Our our pre-Crime Con New Orleans trip.
Scouting trip.
You know what? There's a lot of creepy in New Orleans, so, I mean, you can't just cover that in one trip.
Yeah.
Like, you really can't. There's so much going on.
So your listeners need to fund 2 trips to New Orleans.
We need mucho funding. Please go ahead and sign up for that. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube. Find us on Instagram and also on our Facebook page. What else do we have? Oh, just anywhere, just go ahead and hit the subscribe, comment, please, if you could rate us. Oh, we are on iTunes, and we have instructions on how to use our RSS feed to find us on iTunes. Please rate us and comment on iTunes, because the more ratings and comments that we get on iTunes, the further up the search list we go, so that more people can find us. So that would be really appreciated. I think that's all I have. I just have a featured band from Pensacola that I would like to introduce. Do you guys want to have like your final thoughts? Final thoughts, Jason.
I'm tired.
Final thought, I like bands. Play that band.
You got the Bends?
I love bands.
Oh, you love bands.
Love the Bends, the album. Get well, Jordyn.
Yes, get well, Jordyn.
Yeah.
They did this for you.
Yeah.
Get well, Jordyn.
Thanks.
Get well soon.
Oh, do that.
No, I did it.
Do it
Yeah.
again.
I just did it.
Do it again.
Come on in harmony.
Get well,
Jordan.
Get
Get well soon. Get well, Jordan.
It's Jayson and Troy, man.
Moon.
Fuck yeah. You guys, that was awesome. She's going to love that. You guys nailed it. All right, so the band we have today is Precubed, and they are providing us the song Silver Mountain, and this is from their new EP 3, and that will be here.
Great band.
Yeah, so they are really, really good. You should check them out. They will be playing on December 15th at Live Juice Bar in Pensacola, and that is awesome because that's my buddy Rick Kendall's place. And so Pachakacha will also be at Live at some point. He's a friend of the organization, a former speaker. So yeah, check out Precubed at Live Juice Bar on December 15th. They will also be at Green Door Music Hall on January 25th, and that's in Fort Walton Beach. So please show up, show your support. That was awesome. Cool. You guys, that was really special. And I'm so happy I was here to witness it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much. All right. The end.
Come on in harmony.
Get well,
Jordan. Get well soon.
Get well,
Jordan.
It's Jayson and Troy Moon.
Moon.
Yeah. You guys, that was awesome.